For the Sharks to show improvement this year, they're going to need to get more production from their bottom six. Who makes the bottom six? Who's on the bubble? We try to sort it out.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, my blog about the San Jose Sharks with an emphasis on Sharks prospects. Also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making the Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be shifting through what is the massive battle for the bottom six. Look at all the players who are going to be competing for jobs in the bottom six, which players are young players going to be pushing for those jobs, which veterans might be fighting for some jobs, and options for the Sharks to try to maybe pare down this group a little bit. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So we know we've talked Monday. We looked at the top six, kind of how that's stacking out. Yesterday we looked at forwards who could be or young players, who could be kind of competing for some jobs. Today we're going to be looking at the bottom six, which is a lot of dudes. There's a lot of people kind of competing for spots here, and I do really think, like, if the Sharks want to see improvement this season, you need to get better play from your bottom six, because it just has been, and that's part of the life of a rebuilding team, right? Is just the depth isn't there, and a lot of guys are unfortunately kind of pushed up the depth chart higher than they would be on kind of competing teams and better teams, and the Sharks have had to kind of play guys out of position a lot because they're just not a deep roster, right? But for this Sharks team, like, we do expect steps from Celebrini and Smith and all the young guys, but getting more consistent and reliable production from your bottom six would go a long, long way in helping this offense not be the absolute worst offense in the NHL, and helping this team not be the absolute worst team in the NHL 2 years running. Hopefully not 3 years running, right? And like looking at where they got production from, and again, like, you're not going to get, this team struggles to score goals no matter what, right? But looking at guys who played kind of predominantly bottom 6 minutes, like Luke Cunning kind of led the way with goals, with 11 goals last year in 63 games. You look at guys like Carl Grundström, who scored 3 goals last year, and, Ty Dellandrea, who scored 1 goal the entire season. Barclay Goodrow had 5, which I think is a fair amount for him. Alex Wennberg, who spent a good chunk of the season playing the third line center position, only scored 10 goals last year. And, even a guy like Colin Graff, who, played half a season, had 5 goals, like, in 33 games. I feel like there's just more kind of meat on the bone when it comes to potentially getting production from the bottom six. And I think, again, if they can get anywhere, if you can start seeing more guys kind of reaching that double digits, you're gonna probably start to win more games and not have to rely on your Eklunds and your Toffolis and your Celebrinis to kind of carry the load as much, right? Those guys are going to be kind of the bus drivers for this team, right? And how those guys play usually is going to determine how the Sharks play. But getting more offensive production from your bottom six, I think would be that's kind of that next step for this team as they try to start to win more games, right? And just having where it's not just Celebrini having to do everything, or Will Smith having to do like trying to get more out of your bottom six. So let's look at players who I think are pretty safe to say are going to be on the NHL roster. And I think Alex Wennberg is kind of the first name you start with, right? And we talked yesterday about if Will Smith doesn't win the second line center job, where they don't feel like he's a center, Alex Wennberg is going to be your second line center. If not, I think Wennberg is your third line center. Like, it's pretty safe to say that's like going to be Wennberg's role, is either the second or third line center for the Sharks, because they just don't have a lot of other guys that you feel comfortable with right now being kind of taking on that role, right? And then among some of the other players here, I think Adam Gaudette is safely like going to have a roster spot, right? You went out and you got him this offseason at 2 years at $2 million a pop. And I think Gaudette, if you're looking for someone to help provide some scoring pop, this is a guy who I think is, he scored 19 goals last year playing fourth line minutes for the Sens. Do I think he's going to score 19 goals again playing the same, shooting 21%? Probably not. But I think he's a guy you can probably pencil in for at least 10 goals if he gets consistent minutes, right? Then you look at Barclay Goodrow, and his cap hit at $3.6 million. He's got 2 years left, which includes trade protections on it. He has a 15-team no trade list. Like, Goodrow is, he's good in the locker room. He's a guy who wears a letter typically. Like, he's here for a reason, to try to help these young guys kind of learn the proper way to be a professional hockey player. Like, we know what Goodrow's role is going to be on this team, right? He's probably going to play fourth line minutes again. If you need him to play center, he can play a little center for you, but he's mostly a kind of defensive wing here. So, and then I think the other kind of guy who you feel like is probably a pretty safe bet would be Dellandrea, who came over as a wing, but kind of transferred over to started playing center last year. I thought did a pretty solid job at it as well. And I think he's a player who the Sharks kind of like a lot. And like, it's hard for me to, unless he gets traded, like a team kind of blows you away with an offer, which is very possible. Maybe if a team wants to try to upgrade their bottom six and feels like Dellandrea might be able to do that for them. And especially at a very reasonable $1.3 million contract, I think it's pretty safe to say he's going to be on the San Jose Sharks roster here, opening night, right? As we continue to kind of look through these training camp battles. And those guys kind of like, if your centers are Celebrini, Smith, Wennberg, Dellandrea as your fourth line center, like, you can kind of like, okay, like, we can kind of work with that at least, right? And I think Dellandrea is a perfectly cromulent fourth line center. And I do think he got a little unlucky with the goal scoring last year. And I think that could be an area if you're looking for improvement. Dellandrea scoring more than one goal this season, it would be something that you would look towards, right? And I know he had 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. But he's going back to the 22-23 season, like, he put up 9 goals, 19 assists, 28 points, playing kind of third line minutes there as a winger. But I think he's a guy where you can maybe try to extract a little bit more offense out of him and hope to get a little bit more offense out of him, especially with some of the additions that, are potentially going to make the Sharks roster here going forward. So some other kind of veteran guys who are going to be in the mix. We'll talk kind of more about them, but you also have Carl Grundström, who's definitely going to be in the mix. You of course have Ryan Reaves, who's going to be in the mix as well for bottom six. And like, Reaves is 100% like fourth line. He's playing 8 minutes a night. You know exactly what Ryan Reaves is here for, like, to kind of be menacing towards the other team. And then, of course, Colin Graff, who I think Colin Graff's a pretty safe lock to be on the team. But he does, like, the thing that goes against him is he is still waivers exempt. So if the Sharks want to have maybe a little bit more quote unquote veteran team, but I think Colin Graff and his ability to play so many different roles is going to keep him on this Sharks roster. So we're going to dig into some of the young guys who are going to be kind of pushing for jobs, kind of how I rate them, and which guys I think have the most potential to make the team, and which guys maybe need some time in the AHL before coming up, and look at who I think makes the team and some options to maybe kind of pare down the roster. Because if you're looking to pare down I think this is the area of guys that could be potentially not here by the season, at the time the season starts. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's their 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is there for you. Monarch, they do the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. The great thing about it, too, is if maybe you and your partner have separate accounts, but are also working towards a goal together, whether it's buying a house, buying a car, or just planning your next adventure. They're great for that, as well as you can, again, have your own personal accounts, but then track shared goals as well. Makes it really nice and really simple. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, before we continue, of course, I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you're done with this episode, go check out the latest episode of Locked On NHL Podcast. There's no off season, bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. On Tuesday, Seth and I just looked at the Canadiens, the Devils, and the Flames, kind of looking at burning questions surrounding all three of those teams, as all those teams are going to be kind of pushing for the playoffs this year. So find Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right. So we kind of know the players, the expected players in it. And again, I feel like four of those guys are relatively safe, right? Between Goodrow, Gaudette, Wennberg, and Dellandrea. I feel like those four guys are relatively safe. And Colin Graff, I feel, is pretty safe as well. So you're realistically looking at one more guy to kind of actually play, and then either one or two extras, depending on how many defensemen you have. And spoiler for tomorrow's episode, you're probably going to have 8 defensemen on your roster. So you realistically, you probably have room for one more forward on your roster who's going to play bottom 6 minutes, most likely. Right. And this doesn't even include Michael Misa, who, again, could be playing top 6 minutes, could also be playing, third line minutes. And I put together my Misa, Wennberg, Graff would be my I would really enjoy that third line there. But again, you're running out of room for all these guys here. So, but who are some of the young guys who I think can really push for an NHL job? And again, we looked at a lot of the forwards yesterday and mainly kind of the young high-end forwards. Today, we're going to be kind of looking at guys who I think are more suited for these bottom 6 roles here. And the guys who I realistically think could make a push are Ethan Cardwell, Oscar Olason, Zach Ostapchuk, Egor Afanasyev, and then I'm going to put Patrick Giles as well. So that's 5 guys pushing for maybe one spot on this bottom 6 roster. So let's go through these guys really quickly. Cardwell, like as much as I really like Cardwell, I do think he starts the season in the AHL. One, because he's waivers exempt, so he can bounce between the NHL and AHL easily without having to go through the waivers process. And you're like, if you want to try to keep some guys on the roster who are not waivers exempt for a little bit longer, like he could be unfortunately a guy who like starts the season in the HL, and that's not the worst thing for him, right? Who a guy like in his rookie season scored a bunch for the Barracuda, a little bit more up and down last year when it came to the scoring production, but is a player who I do think is going to be a really solid kind of third line player, and the potential of one day having Cardwell and Graf playing on the same penalty kill, like that is a very exciting proposition because it just Cardwell is all hustle type of mentality, and I think those two could be ace penalty killers for you like in the future. So, going through again, still Oscar Olofsson. So interesting with him because he's not waiver. He's still in his ELC, but he's not waivers exempt anymore. So the Sharks would have to pass him through waivers. I think his stock is pretty low right now where I'm not worried about him passing through waivers and getting claimed. And again, like with all these guys, right? Like, yes, you want to have proper kind of, management of your roster, but at some point you're going to have to kind of hope and pray that they get through waivers. And if they don't, you have to be willing to kind of accept that. And again, this team is also right at the limit when it comes to contracts. So, maybe one of these guys getting picked off isn't the worst thing in the world for you as you're trying to potentially offload a contract here. So Ostapchuk, I know people are still extremely down on Ostapchuk. I'm giving him the Fabian Zetterlund like treatment of like, okay, let's see what happens now that you're spend the whole off season kind of getting ready for this. So I think though Ostapchuk probably, again, another guy who is waivers exempt, probably starts the season in the AHL and then gets called up here at some point as well. The last two guys are guys who I do think could these are the two I think could legitimately push for a job. We'll start with Egor Afanasyev. So Afanasyev, of course, the Sharks acquired from the Nashville Predators when they traded Ozzy Weisblatt. He spent last season over in the KHL, and he's played a handful of games in the NHL. He's got 19 games with 1 goal during that time, but he's a player who has scored at a decent clip throughout his career in the AHL. In the 23-24 season, he had 27 goals in 56 games. Last year in the KHL, kind of he only scored 7 goals over there. But if you're looking for more scoring production, and Afanasyev is a guy who can be that player, and if he has a lights out training camp, that could be a legitimate scoring option for you in the bottom 6 for a team that struggled to score goals last year. And I don't think you can. I think he can be a player who can add what you want on the bottom 6, right? Because he's got some size. He's 6'3", 203 pounds. Like, he's not a small player. I think he can add some size and add some scoring for you as well. And he's the one where you're kind of like, okay, I think he could legitimately push for an NHL job, and is a player who's went over to KHL, maybe got humbled a little bit. I think he's gonna be really hungry to come over here and try to kind of prove everyone wrong a little bit. So, and then finally the other guy who I think Patrick Giles. So Giles had an outstanding run for the Barracuda during their postseason, like kind of end of the season and the postseason there. Ace penalty killer as well. And if you are looking to, again, kind of pump up that penalty kill a little bit, which has been brutal, he could be that. And especially as your 4th C, if Smith doesn't win the 3C job, or the 2C job, and you have to push Wennberg up. I think Giles could be a big beneficiary of that, as it kind of opens up a center spot for him. And he also a big dude at 6'5", 216 pounds. But like how he played in the playoffs in the AHL, I was very impressed with him. And if he can parlay that into a really good camp, he could be another player kind of pushing for a job. And maybe he won't get as much production, but he could have a role as a kind of a good penalty killer on a team that's penalty kill was bad last year, right? Maybe help that. So those are the young players. And I think Afanasyev and I think Giles are the two that you're kind of looking at as legitimate players to potentially come in here and try to win a job outright out of training camp and maybe push some of these veteran guys out. So we're going to talk about some of these veteran guys who might get pushed out, including Grundström. We're going to talk about Ryan Reaves. We're going to, kind of some of these other guys and see ways that you can maybe kind of open up some spots here. So we'll discuss that in just 1 second. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll win $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is great because it fits however you like to play. If you're building player props, which are super fun, right? If you just think, if you just want to root for Josh Allen to do Josh Allen things, Josh Allen player props, you're probably going to have a really fun time with that. Or if you're a same game parlay person where you kind of believe this is what's going to happen in a game, or live action, jumping in with live action betting. So maybe you had the Vikings, I don't know, kind of in the third quarter. Feel like I think the Vikings are going to come back and win this game. You're probably feeling really happy after Monday night's game. So it's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your football weekends. So if you're ready to start playing, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. I'm also super excited to tell you about my new favorite jeanswear brand, Doer. I've been living in their performance denim straight jeans, and honestly, they've completely changed the game for me. I love my Doer jeans. I wear them to work all the time. They have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. They look great, which is important, but they also feel great. The jeans are made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. Doer combines classic jeanswear style with kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear, so you get the best of both worlds. And Doer are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. There's a reason why they call them the world's most comfortable pants, but don't take my word for it. Go try a pair out for yourselves. Doer just opened a store right here in Hayes Valley, so you can feel the difference firsthand. Go check them out at 567 Hayes Street. Mention our promo code LOCKEDONSF in store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopdoer.com/LockedOnSF for 15% off. That's shopdoer.com/LockedOnSF. All right, so we have a lot of dudes kind of competing for this bottom 6 here, right? And realistically, like if Misa's not in the top 6, he's going to play on the third line. Wennberg, Graf, or Gaudet is probably your third line, and like that, I think that's a really fun third line that's going to give you more potential scoring production than what you saw last year, even with Will Smith like on that third line to start the season. And then once eventually Misa kind of grows into his top 6 role, you can kick down Kurashev or kick down Skinner or whomever you want, right? And Kurashev probably being the guy who gets kicked down. And even if it's a Kurashev, Wennberg, Graf, or Gaudet type of line, like I think that there's still enough scoring pop there for you, where I think it can be a very productive line. But then this fourth line, it feels like it's going to be a bit of a mess, right? And, assuming Goodrow is your left wing, assuming Dellandrea is your center, that leaves Reaves, Grundström, and then all the other dudes I just mentioned, right? With all the young players between Reaves, Grundström, Gaudette, Graf, or like whoever does it between Gaudette and Graf, Cardwell, Olesen, Afanasyev, like Patrick Giles, Ostapchuk. That leaves all those other people kind of competing for basically who's the healthy scratch, right? So my guess is I think the Sharks try to kind of free up their options as much as possible by potentially trying to see who they can get down into the AHL. And as a reminder, you can quote unquote bury $1.15 million of a contract in the AHL. Anything over that will be on your NHL roster. So if Ryan Reaves, for example, at $1.35 million, if they were to waive him and he successfully goes through waivers, the Sharks will have a cap hit of $200,000. Well, and again, like the Sharks don't have to worry about their cap because they're, safely over the floor, and they're $16 million over the floor, and they're about $10 million under the cap. So they have plenty of wiggle room here. So having a guy buried on your cap isn't the end of the world right now. So, but I think Ryan Reaves is a player who is definitely in that gets waived to try to kind of give you some flexibility where you can have him in the AHL or you can have him in the NHL. And he's a player who played AHL games as early as last year, right? He played 3 games in the AHL last year. He only played 35 games in the NHL. So he's a player who I would try to see if you can get through. And if somebody claims him, then somebody claims Ryan Reaves. Okay. So he's a player I would be doing. Another one I think is Carl Grundström. So he has a cap hit of 1.8. So you'd be able to bury, we'll just say 600,000 will be stuck on your, a little over 600,000 will be stuck on your cap if you buried him or if you got him down to the AHL. He played AHL games as recently as 23-24 with the Ontario Reign, and was actually really productive in his time in the AHL as well, and has also played like for Team Sweden and played internationally, et cetera, et cetera. But I think he's your guy that you try to move. And maybe it's a team that's looking, maybe they have an injury in their bottom 6 or whatever it is, but he's the guy where it's like, we'll be happy to take a 7th round pick type of player. Here's an NHL body who can play, like he can play on your bottoms, he can play on your 4th line, he can be a healthy scratch, like whatever you want to do. I would try to waive him, get him through waivers to kind of clear that up and make it easy for whatever team is going to potentially acquire him. And then I would trade him for a 7th round pick, because if he gets through waivers, that goes with him to the other team. So if, say, for example, the Sharks traded him to, I don't know, whoever, Boston or whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? When he gets to Boston, or like that team can just send him down to the AHL without a problem. And that gives them some flexibility. So that's why a team may not try to, because if they grab him off of waivers, he has to go straight to the NHL. So that's why teams sometimes they don't just grab guys off for free on the waivers, because then they have to go through the whole process of trying to put him on waivers to try to move him down. And sometimes you see guys get claimed and then get claimed back again. Like you kind of see that ping pong effect with him. So Grundström's the guy I think that if I'm Carl Grundström, I'm maybe renting this year is what I would say between all these guys. So, but yeah, I think Grundström and Reaves are 2 candidates to potentially get waived to try to get moved down to the AHL. And like I said, I think Grundström is the first player I'm trying to trade among there. I am curious though with Afanasyev if he shows out in preseason. And if maybe a team calls and asks, like, hey, we'll give you a 5th round pick or like, again, like none of the picks don't matter right now. You're trying to clear roster spots, right? You're trying to open up roster spots because the Sharks have too many contracts and just too many NHL-ish players right now. If Afanasyev plays well, is in a team, it's like, hey, we want to add a guy to our bottom six. What are you thinking here with Afanasyev, who again didn't play with the Sharks last year, and that could be another one too, or especially if he balls out in the preseason, and the Sharks are a little kind of hesitant on where he kind of fits in with the roster right now, and especially if you like a guy like Colin Graf more, if you like a guy, like Michael Misa more, and you think those are better fits for your third line right now. That's where I would kind of look there. At least they're kind of among some of those players who might be you're not getting anything of value back, right? You're looking at late round picks type of thing, but I think those are some moves you could potentially make to try to kind of open up some roster flexibility, and give yourself some more contract slots, especially if you can move off of one of Grundström or Afanasyev or whomever, right? So anyway, that's going to be it for me today. We finished up with our training camp preview tomorrow by looking at the defense. And if you want to talk about a lot of guys for not a lot of spots, tomorrow is going to be fun to kind of try to figure out the defense. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok. Follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Until tomorrow. Bye, friends.